Hi, everybody. Welcome to Heaven Channel. Jared and I are thrilled because we have a very special guest named Cayelin Castell, and she is a very important woman in Tucson and travels around teaching many things, including being the co-founder of the Shamanic Mystery School, Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, and Jared and I are huge proponents of teaching about mystery schools, and you're also the co-founder of Venus Alchemy. So Cayelin is in Tucson, Arizona right now. We're in Joshua Tree. It's July 20th, the new moon in 2020. So 20.
Right, all the 20s.
Welcome, Cayelin.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here. And it is a new moon in Cancer, the second Cancer new moon, because the first one was on the solstice.
That's right.
So on June 20th, another 20, right? We had a new moon. And it was a solar eclipse called the annular eclipse, or the Ring of Fire. And it was happening right in one of the most important places in the sky. I'll share a little bit more about that in a moment. And so it was right at 0 degrees Cancer, right when the solstice was happening. And then, of course, 29 and a half days later, we'll have another new moon in the late degrees of Cancer. That means that we're going to have 4 full moons between the June solstice and the September equinox. And from the full moon standpoint, that's called a blue moon. So we can imagine it's a blue new moon.
Nice.
It doesn't happen all that often that you get a new moon in the same sign twice. And also one that started with an eclipse on a solstice, so we're just in a really remarkable time. And then the other thing that's happening today is the sun is opposite Saturn. And so I'm happy to share a little bit more about that, but I just wanted to
yeah, bring it on.
Like, we're in an amazing time today.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say that where we live, we can see the entire night sky in the northern hemisphere. So there's incredible Scorpio laying across the horizon. There's the Milky Way cutting through. We have Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Venus, the Pleiades right there in the dawn, where I usually stay up till and watch, Venus rising. It's so bright. I can't even believe it's a planet.
I know. I often like to refer to her as the spotlight in the sky. You cannot miss her.
Yeah, for real. It's been special seeing it out here. It's just so visible.
I just so love that you're doing that, because one of the things that we really encourage in the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School is go out under the night sky. Get familiar with the planets and the constellations and how things are moving and the seasons, and have that direct relationship, because ancient cultures did that. And we have stopped doing that. Like, we tend to watch TV at night instead of going outside. Yeah, exactly. Right? So to get up early in the morning, or to just even go out for a few minutes and get your own direct transmission from what these planets and these stars have for us, it's just so good. That's really what we encourage people to do. We don't demand it.
Do it now.
Go look at the stars.
Right. Do it or else.
Well, certainly, if we needed to survive before GPS, we might need to know where the stars are in the sky.
Exactly, right? Yeah, knowing how to navigate by the stars was something ancient people did. And they literally built standing stone circles and pyramids and petroglyph sites and chambered cairns and temple sites that were tracking the rising and setting of certain stars, the solstices and equinoxes, the moon cycle. And the moon does what the moon does every month what the sun does in a year, but every 19 years, the moon comes back to a starting place. And they were tracking that in Scotland at the, there's a stone circle there called Cayelin. I forget which number it is. There's a lot of sites at Cayelin, but they were tracking that 19-year moon cycle. Literally, it was when the moon walked the land at the full moon. It would rise up, skim across the horizon, and then set. And it would go like right through the standing stone circle. And that was like their ceremonial magic that they had created there.
Amazing.
Ooh, I got chills.
Yeah.
I love the moon. I'm in love with the moon.
Yeah,
all
same.
my songs are about the moon.
Right? Well, the moon is, it tells us what time it is of the month, right?
That's
And the word month is named after month.
Right. Well, there's the lunar calendar too, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So when you were saying that, I was definitely thinking. So you brought up the navigation, which we know was used, back in the day. I'm sure still used now to some degree. But what about the energetic qualities? I mean, I feel like that connection is not, for a lot of people, it's just missed completely.
Right. Yes. So, and that's something that I think that the cultures, why they built these structures to track these cycles, was because they were aware of that energetic, and that helped to amplify it, right? So if you have these massive standing stone circles and, the moon is rising up between certain stones, or the sun is rising up between certain stones, then you know that it's a certain time, but it's also being amplified by that energy. You don't have to have that in order to tune in. But it's just a reminder that, yes, this is important. And
Right.
we've lost, and literally we could say that, as we came into a time when there were more dominator cultures, like kings and queens and people who were in charge and kind of dominating the lower classes, whatever that might be, a lot of these mysteries were taken from the people, literally on purpose, so they could be the ones in control and know what was going on. So our job is to get that back. It's to re-empower ourselves with this information and to go out and reconnect and have that direct transmission, because that's what they did. They would get the direct transmission and, then whatever. And so we haven't, we haven't remembered that, or we're not taught that. Let's put it that way. We're not taught that. So how do we take responsibility and say, okay, I'm going to spend more time under the stars. I'm going to spend more time with the sky. I'm going to spend more time understanding where the planets are, what stars they're with, what those stars might mean, and go get my own direct transmission, because what it means to me might be something different than what it means to you.
Yeah, 100%. So what would you say, for, let's say, just a layman, what are the benefits of doing this? Why should people do this, especially now? What would you say for that?
So for me, I'll just kind of speak from my experience. It's where I find there's greater magic, and when we're attuned to, and we could say if we understand the saying, we inform the mysteries as much as they inform us. So if we're not informing them, we're just and we're not even open to being informed by them, then we're just kind of haphazardly living our lives. But if we get to that place where we're open to being informed, and we're also having intention and ceremony and, creating the magic ourselves and being in alignment with that, then we're helping to inform what those mysteries are, as above, so below, but also as below, so above. So what we're doing here is helping to inform what's going on there, and vice versa. It's a relationship. So, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. I think that it's more like it's feeling it, and a lot of people will get caught up in they gotta feel like they understand it with their mind. and this is the language that we're not familiar with because we didn't grow up with it. So in ancient cultures, when people grew up with this language and this understanding, it was easy for them. So it's not maybe as easy for us, but if we are allowing ourselves to cultivate the understanding through what we feel and what we experience directly by going out and being under the sky, that's really helpful. That's going to change our lives. It totally changed mine.
Right. And also, it just made me think, being out here, we get the full sky. And when we bring people outside who come over to visit, you can see them change under the stars. All the aggression and stress, it melts away. And you can tell that they feel the temple of the cosmos.
Right.
In the cities, I lived in New York City for 12 years. There was there were no stars, you know, maybe you could see a planet here and there. But in Tucson, I believe they turn the lights out at night. Is that part of it?
Well, they don't turn the lights out, but they do have the dimming factor, because there's a lot of, you know, there's observatories, and, you know, it's considered a more of a night sky place to be. And there are certain places in town where you have an ability to see it, but really the best way to go is to go out away from the city lights. And even though this is dimmer city lights, because they're trying to be sensitive to what's in the sky. But, you know, to really see that Milky Way,
Yeah.
Just so amazing.
Yeah. I dream of a future where the lights go out at night and the
Right?
stars are given back to the people.
Yeah.
I feel like what you said about dominating cultures, how they took away the mystery from the people on purpose. You know, I don't think a lot of people know about, you know, these early teachings that were robbed from the masses. And I just like to envision a future where the skies are dark and the stars are given back to the people, and there's quiet at night and darkness, because the darkness has so much to offer.
Right. And the stars and the planets, and becoming familiar with how, like, one of the things people can do easily is start tracking the moon. So from a new moon, and today is a new moon when the sun and the moon are conjunct, but literally ancient cultures, most of them didn't consider the new moon till they could see the crescent moon in the sky at night. So that'll be in the next day or so. I mean, sometimes it's earlier, depends on where you are on the planet. Sometimes it's that crescent moon. So if you can't see it tomorrow night, you'll definitely see it the night after. And so that's when a lot of cultures would start the moon, like they would consider that the new moon, that tiny crescent moon in the sky. And then it gets bigger every night, and it moves a little further and across different stars every night until it's rising in the east and it's fall. Right. And so you get to see, you know, you can kind of get to tune into different constellations as the moon is passing through them, and it's changing signs every couple of days, every 2.5 days or so. And so one of the easiest things to learn how to track is to track the moon and what it's doing. And then it'll pass certain planets as well. So, you know, it's about to, it just passed Venus. It was in the last few, I'm sure you got to see it.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
We did, actually.
Yeah.
It was insane, yeah. I mean, from where we are, the moon rises over some mountain range, and it looks like a tangerine slice, you know, when it comes up over, and you have Venus just blasting us.
Right. Yeah. And so in a couple of days now, it'll then be in the sky after the sun sets in the west. So it's shifted, you know, where we see it from the morning, because it was in the morning a few days ago, and now it'll be in the evening. And I often think of that little crescent moon as the Cheshire cat smile.
Yeah, totally.
It's hard not to.
Right?
What was the message of the Cheshire cat? I know the caterpillar said, "Who are you?"
Yeah, good question. Very good question.
And I don't really think that most people actually know who they are or what they are even. And I think that the work you're doing with priestesses and traditions that come out of ancient teachings, that work is very inspiring right now for people, because I think we're all living in a new world. So we're going to need new skills to survive.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that, you know, it's just a few years after I started doing this work with Shamanic Astrology that I, in 1995, started the priestess work. And what was interesting about when I started that work was I was in my Venus return. So every 8 years, we go through a Venus return. But it lasts for 19 months. So it can start as much as 1.5 years prior to your 8-year birthday. And that just depends on where you are in the cycle, or as close to your 8-year birthday. So for example, people who are turning a multiple of 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, 64, 72, 80, 88, 96, 104. Thank you. Between June 10th of 2020 and January 14th of 2022, they are in a Venus return. Oh, you are? Oh, you're in a Venus return. Oh, well, so no wonder we're having this conversation.
Okay, well, do tell.
So what it means is then that whatever that, so for women, Venus represents the intended feminine expression for the current life. Or what aspect of the goddess have you come to explore, express, help evolve? And for men, it represents what is that inner connection to the divine feminine that you're intended to develop within yourself. Oftentimes, though, we initially tend to project. We learn how to own it for ourselves. So, and for women, it's their Mars position they tend to project. And boy, did I do that in my earlier life. But anyway, so when I started this priestess work, I happened to be in my age 40 Venus return. And, but I didn't really, I knew that the Venus return would happen at age 40, but I didn't know that the cycle started prior, like when, you know, I was, it started actually when I was 38, and then it ended shortly after I turned 40. So I'm one of those who gets it a longer time of it before I actually have the birthday. And then some people will have it, and then it, you know, they have like a year and a half left to go of being in the cycle after they have the birthday. So, and what we realized is that this is a powerful initiation time and in helping us to get more in touch with, like, coming to a higher octave. So you could say maybe you're, you know, you have certain expression of the feminine, or that you connected with, or that you're expressing whatever that is. But at the Venus return, it's bringing it to a higher octave. And there's a whole story that was, and oh, by the way, my Venus symbol behind me is the 5-pointed star, because as Venus rises 5 times in 8 years in 5 different points, creating a pentagram in the sky. Oh, wow. So that's the Venus magic. The pentagram is a divine feminine symbol. Amazing. And isn't that cool? And very then cool. The Sumerians and the Babylonians really understood this. And so they had the story of Inanna making her descent into the underworld, or Ishtar. The Babylonians they called her Ishtar, the Sumerians called her Inanna. And literally every 8 years they would reenact this story, because it describes the cycle of Venus through the sky. So she's morning star, she makes 7 or 8 moon conjunctions after she goes direct. That represents 7 or 8 gates of descent into the underworld. Then she travels with the sun, so she's not seen in the morning or evening sky. So the ancients saw that as being in the underworld, where she dies and is reborn. But she's with the sun, the source of light and life for our planet. So she's going through a death and rebirth with the source, which is kind of cool. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and then she's reborn in the evening sky, and she goes through 7 or 8 moon conjunctions, rising up into the evening sky, reclaiming everything she had to leave and let go of on her way into the underworld. And so we see that as it's like a death and rebirth cycle, shamanic death and rebirth, where you're dying to who you think you are, so you can be reborn to who you really are.
Yeah, and it's a great message for the times, with death on the minds of everybody, letting go of possessions and ego identity in order to have it return even better. It's like letting go to allow it to come back. It's a huge lesson.
It's so big, it's so important, and it's not always easy, because some people resist.
Oh, sure. I think everyone does, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do this a lot. We lead people through this cycle all the time, as that's the Venus alchemy work that we do. And we have people that just jump in and are so into it, and other people who maybe resist a little bit, and then they find that it's like, oh, I see where I'm resisting, because man, this is getting tough. So now and then they get support to surrender, right? To surrender to whatever it is that they need to surrender to, because that is part of the process. It's not about being in control. It's not about making things happen. It's a time of allowing, and to be willing to face the fear, to face the things that maybe we haven't wanted to look at, to allow ourselves to let go of the things that are no longer working for us, right? Perspectives, identities, all of those things. So the Venus cycle is really a great way to work through all that. And literally in the story, when Inanna and Ishtar are going into the underworld, the going through the different gates. At each gate, each Venus-Moon conjunction in the morning sky or the evening sky, on the morning sky, she's letting go. So the first thing she gives up is her crown. So that's what just happened a couple of days ago. She gave up her crown. And then, each vestment represents a chakra. So the crown chakra, then the third eye, then the throat chakra. So she gives up her necklace, the lapis lazuli beads around her neck, and she has a breastplate at her heart chakra. She has a ring of power for the solar plexus. She has a belt, or sometimes it's described as bracelets, but that represents the sacral chakra, and then her royal robe as her root chakra. And so, so these are literally, they were representative of the chakras, going through the chakras and releasing any distortions, any blocks, anything that's disallowing us from having a stronger connection with that chakra energy. So it gives us a great framework for how to work with the cycle as a ceremony.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so they literally would do ceremony every 8 years when Venus rose as morning star near the spring equinox, because that was where all happening things in the sky were, right? So about 6,500 years ago, that's about where Venus is right now, is in that part of the sky, rising not at spring equinox, but at summer solstice. It's nearer the summer solstice now, so but also the Mayans were really tracking the Venus cycle. They tracked it for thousands of years, forward and back. They were so attuned to Venus. That was so important to them. So I get excited about Venus.
How can you not?
I mean, it's very exciting.
She's closest to the Earth. She's the brightest thing in the sky. Sirius is our brightest star, but she's the brightest. She's way brighter than Sirius.
And Sirius is 2.
So binary.
Sirius is 3, I think.
3. Oh, 3.
Yeah. Sirius A, B, and C.
There's a C now.
And Sirius is big and bright, but not close enough to the Earth for us to see her as brighter than Venus.
No.
Right.
Yeah, Venus is insane.
And Venus also has a quality in the way that the Pleiades have a diamond, they're just so different in the sky. And Venus is so clear. The light that comes off Venus, it always mesmerizes me.
Did you get to see Venus when she was inside the Pleiades in April?
Yes.
So that only happens every 8 years. So that was one of the sort of rare factors happening this year, 2020, as if we didn't have enough things going on.
Right.
And only every 8 years. Usually it's like, here's the Pleiades and Venus kind of passes by this way, but literally Venus passed right through the Pleiades this year. And it'll happen again in 8 years. And then the other thing that's unique about this particular Venus cycle is she rose as morning star with a star called Aldebaran, the eye of the bull. And that's one of the 4 royal stars of the ancients. And so it's the closest rise of Venus with Aldebaran in probably 155 years. So it's pretty exciting that was happening and bringing our attention to that star. And to me, that star represents perception. The eye. What do we perceive?
Sure. Nice.
So, yeah.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. They're both kind of big questions, so I don't want to get too, crazy about it. But so I'll say both of them, and then maybe we can just get to, try to get to both of them. But yeah, so one is, so we just talked about a lot of stuff, but in there, I kind of keyed on to the shamanic death and that concept of death and rebirth, right? And how I think all of us sort of implicitly do understand this in some way. It's sort of written into our DNA, but at the same time, in this kind of modern Western culture, we're very mind oriented, and the mind does not really process concepts like that because they're too big for the mind. The mind can't process that. Right. Actually, is not even able to, even if you wanted to. So you could think of it philosophically, but what I'm arriving at here is, because I think all this stuff, so if you take, the 2 words, well, let's take let's take the forward. Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, right? Okay, let's just go in terms of the words right there. Shamanic Astrology Mystery, right? Let's just take those 3 words. These are words that, to me, invoke spirit, invoke concept of the spirit, and don't necessarily have to do with the other directions, in the 4 directions, east, west, and south. I think of a north kind of spiritual direction. And I feel like overall the West has been lacking, severely in this area, and some might say that this was predicted by Nietzsche. He said, God was dead. And I think that's what he was referring to, is that we no longer were going to have this connection to spirit. So, I mean, when I hear you talking about this stuff, I'm very interested in it. But for someone that's just like, who cares about like where the stars are, meaning, you know what I mean? Like, why they don't understand the significance. Viewers, but
some of our viewers.
So that's why I'm saying this. But I think that, this connection to the spirit is just 100% necessary to being connected with your actual life and your existence on this plane. Right. So can you maybe just speak on that a little bit, like what your take is on that, and maybe if you, just jumping off of what I said.
So I love this question. It's so important, and really, literally, we live in great mystery. And I know the Native American people talk about great mystery. We are living in great mystery, and there are 4 elements you were kind of speaking to. There's earth, that's more the body and physical embodiment, and the earth we live on, there's the earth element. There's air, that has to do with the mind, right? So how we perceive our reality, and also how we communicate. And air, without air, we need wind. We need the seeds to be blown around. We need that element to have the life that we have. We need to breathe. Without air, we don't live for very long. We have water, and water, of course, is, our bodies are 70% water. The earth is mostly water, and it helps to nourish, and it's cleansing and it's clearing of our body, and of hopefully, when rain comes, we know that the plants will grow and that kind of thing. So we need water, and that's more the feeling realm. So we have earth as the physical realm, we have air as the mental realm, we have water as the feeling realm, and we have fire as the realm of action and spirit. So in the creation process is what we intend, what we're imagining that we want to have in our creation, is what we're thinking about, like what we're imagining, what we're, and what we're speaking into, and then what we're feeling, and then the actions we take that create that reality. Because if without the action, you can do all the other pieces and nothing's going to happen. So there's that, and so spirit is within everything, or that fire energy is infused in everything, and without it, that it's, if you think about it, how it exists in our body, it's our temperature, it's what digests our food, it's what causes us to take action to be able to run or walk or whatever it is that we do. So all these elements are super important, and something we've also gotten away from understanding. The ancient alchemists understood how important these elements were. And from an astrological point of view, where we see that the different signs relate to different elements, and that those energies are something that we can cultivate and bring forth. So we're doing it whether we know it or not. Right. So we're living in connection to spirit whether we know it or not, and to the greater divine, greater mystery. Right. So it doesn't matter if people believe it or not. It's like, you don't have to believe in the sun. The sun is there.
Good point.
It's like, you can deny it all you want, but it's still there.
Sure. And somehow the constellations stick together, and they move together across the cosmos in a very predictable way. And when I think about that, just the traversing of the stars, it's almost too much.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Well, I appreciate you saying that, Raquel, because the thing is that from the Earth's perspective, so if we were someplace else in space, we might see those stars differently, like, and also you can actually see them differently based on where you are on the Earth. So some cultures called certain constellations different names because they saw them differently based on how they were perceiving them and what their culture was about. But they have an energy and an essence, regardless of what we call them. They have an energy and an essence. And so what our opportunity is to tune into what is that essence and how is that helping to inform us when we tune into them. And so you were mentioning the scorpion in the sky, and that's literally between the scorpion and the archer. The Milky Way comes between them. And the Galactic Center, the archer actually literally points to it. The arrow of the archer is pointing right to Galactic Center, and it's right above the tail of the scorpion. And that's also where we experience the Galactic Cross, meaning that the planets come across the plane of the solar system called the ecliptic. There's just, the path of the sun and the planets is a certain band across the sky. So that's the plane of the solar system. And then the Milky Way band represents the plane of our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, but that. And so at Galactic Center, the stars are darkest, and that band is darker and easier to perceive than at the other end of it, which is the galactic edge. And the reason this is important is because where those two lines cross, where the galactic plane and the solar system plane cross, from the Earth's perspective, it creates a cross in the sky. And that's where the December solstice sun rises, on the cross.
Wow.
And possible.
Yeah.
And get this, at the solstice, the sun is in the same place for 3 days. So the sun is on the cross for 3 days.
Wow.
Where have we heard that before?
That's weird.
But
Yeah.
so now this will just blow your mind a little more. That can only happen for a period of time. So like about 72 years is the minimum window. 144 years would be the largest window. Every 26,000 years, where the December solstice sun is on the cross, literally on the cross for 3 days at the solstice. And so that tells us we're at this major turning of an age, like 26,000, way bigger than people talk about the age of Aquarius. This is way bigger than that. And so so tuning into that. And so right now, this time of year is the best time to go out and see where that's happening. Because if you can see the archer and you can see the scorpion, you can see right where that cross is and right where the sun is at the December solstice, because you can't see it when the sun's there.
Yeah, we have an insane view. We're too lucky because it's the most visible thing for us is this exact junction that you're talking about.
Right there.
Right this time of year, you can totally see it, right?
Yeah.
So the opportunity is to tune into that, like what, and literally scientists didn't know that was the center of the galaxy until into 1950s. And so, and then they discover, oh, there's this big black hole, center of the galaxy, kind of thing happening, and there's an arrow pointing right towards it.
Who knew? Okay, that's
a good symbol.
That's wonderful. Okay, so two things. So I want to move on to the other question, but also just one other comment on that. So just this, because I've heard you say the word mystery, right? And how important that is. And we actually have we're musicians, so that's what we do. We make music, and we make music hopefully in cosmic vibration, right? We're trying to connect to this larger these energies, and we're trying to transmit them through sonic waves, right? But we actually have a meditation that is titled Acknowledging the Mystery. So it's very, very deeply important to me, and I know it is for Raquel too, that we do live in a complete mystery. So as much as science and all, like, we have this understanding that you're explaining to us. You just told us about the Galactic Center, which is extraordinary. But the reality is we have no idea really why that is occurring or how it's even possible. So it just seems crazy to me that people just kind of like walk along, and like do their thing and have no concern for like all of this incredible mystery that is visible with the naked eye. You don't even need a telescope. You don't need this type of information or knowledge. You just look up and you're like, what is happening?
Beautifully said. And what's interesting about Galactic Center is scientists have found so much energy pours out from that to us from that center of the galaxy that we can tune into. And of course, the stars are sending us their light codes and their information and their mysteries. and if you think of mystery as my story, right? So they're telling us their story, but we have to tune into it. We have to be willing to hear it. We have to be willing and open to engage in that mystery or that story.
Yes, and I would say our own story and our own mystery, because it's
my story is a mystery to me.
It's mysterious how we're talking over the internet right now. But okay, so my other question is, so just moving forward a little bit into the current times, right? So 2020, we know has been just beyond belief. So I would really like to hear from you. What information and energies are you getting for moving forward? What do we need to do? What is the best? What do we need to tap into here? What type of energy are you getting? What is possible now? What do we need to change? You know, that's what I want to know. So
yeah, good. It's a great question. And I mean, because if we're not willing to be with the mystery as it's unfolding, you know, what's the point?
Exactly.
Some people might get left behind if they're not aware that we're all in a folding into the new section.
Exactly.
We want to bring everyone in on this.
Right.
For
exactly.
everyone.
But, you know, and for some people, this is not going to be easy because we have to face our fear. We have to look at the shadow part of ourselves. And sometimes those are our greatest skills and abilities that we haven't been cultivating for whatever reason. Maybe we didn't think we were good enough. Maybe we didn't think we had the tools that we needed. You know, we've been conditioned away from that. We should be doing this, not that, whatever that's about. But this is kind of a reset in a way to like help us get back to what is our true essence, our divine essence. Why are we really here? And how we create a new way of being on the earth. And, you know, some people say new earth, some people say new world, you know, whatever we want to call it. But because we know that whatever was isn't anymore.
Right.
And it's still in it's death throes. It's not done yet, dying. But we are the seed people. We are seeding the new time, this new energy, this new, what's going forward. So the more people that are conscious of that and are willing to plant the seeds of love. I like to think of it as love and light and joy and bliss and magic and miracles. Feeding those things, right? So that we have a world that works for everyone and not just a few, which is what we've had. So really, literally changing that. It's going to take time for that to happen. But those seeds need to be there so that they're ready to go forward when the time is right, when the conditions become right for them to start to blossom and bloom. So if the seeds haven't been planted, so that's really our job. That's why we're here right now. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter how much you accomplish and achieve in a materialistic way. But if you can be that point of light and that seed of light for what's going forward, that is huge. That is really big.
I love that message.
Yeah,
I just want to repeat it to the show. So everyone there in the chat and watching, you're here to plant the seeds of love and light. It's so simple. Thank you for saying it.
Just do it.
Clear way. Yeah.
Just do it.
And
everybody, let's do it.
Easy. It might not be easy because we can get caught up in our fear. We can get caught up in our old conditioning. We can get caught up in those things, and we're still learning how to let that go, to die to that shamanic death process, so we can open to the new, more magical, amazing ways of being. And, you know, as somebody who has led a challenging life, as most of us have, and has at times been really discouraged and thought, I don't even know why I'm here, because this is way too hard, and I just be, God, you can just kill me now because this is not fun. But now I have transmuted and transformed a lot of that so that I feel like I am happier than I've ever been in my entire life, and that I have more hope for the world than I ever have. And if I watch too much news, then I can get depressed.
Cayelin, thank you for saying everything. I think one thing that we might be able to help people with is understand the concept of shamanic death and what that is, because so many friends who come to me in pain during this time, they don't have a way to let go. They don't have the tools of ceremony of letting go or shedding or die off, or even completely dying to become new. Do you want to maybe give folks just a little clue into their own shamanic death process?
Yeah, I think it might be different for everybody.
Yeah.
And some people will resist a little more. Sometimes you know, it's like you might try to hold on to a life that you thought you loved and wanted and keep it. So it's like, and I've done this, you know, it's like, I was everything I had, fought to keep this life, and then it died. And there was nothing I could do about it. It's kind of like the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. The caterpillar dissolves. It can't stop the dissolution.
Right.
Like it tries, it really does, but it can't. And so, but it's becoming something so much more amazing. And so the more we fight it and resist it, the harder it is. The more we allow it and surrender to it, the easier it is. But a lot of it does require us to feel what we feel, to grieve the pain of the losses, to really go through that grief process, and to allow ourselves the permission to feel, and, you know, not to go and take it out on somebody. Because, you know, I've had that happen to me where people, but it's like, okay, I feel like I'm really angry about something. I'm really frustrated about something. I'm really hurting about something. So how do you create the space, a safe space for yourself to really feel those feelings? Because then you can get to a greater place of surrender. You're letting go of all that, trying to hang on and make it work and, you know, sort of gut your way through.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people make it too outside of themselves and too complicated. And it can be very simple as long as it's intentional. It's like sometimes I'll just go outside and, like, you know, beat on the ground or like dig a hole and cry.
Throw some rocks.
Yes, throw some rocks, or, you know, even easier than that, just like a bowl of water, you know, in the house, and you just put your energy in and throw it. But just something to help move the sadness, move the depression,
Yes.
move the
The
pain.
anger, the fury, grab a pillow and scream into it.
Yes.
I think this idea of movement is so important, and it's like, look, people, evolution is inevitable. You know, it's like, it's going to happen. You mentioned the caterpillar. We all know about the caterpillar, but again, we don't. So evolution is inevitable. And so even just using the language, I think language is so important. It's a carrier vessel, right? You say, you know, shamanic death. What does that mean? Well, it means it means a rite of passage. It's another transition into the next phase, and that's all that's been happening forever. You know, no matter what language you use or what you study, every lesson in life is that it's creation, it's rebirth, destruction. You know, it's the same messages over and over again. And I think, again, in our culture, we have a lot of difficulty handling death.
Yes.
We are terrified of death. And death is, yes, it is perhaps the transition from this earth plane to another realm, you know, and however you want to frame it. But death is a transition, period. And, you know, if you're talking about your consciousness, it is the ultimate transition. But, you know, for right now, there are many deaths. There is always a death, you know, and there will always be death. And I think that we need to be comfortable with this word and not afraid of this word. And we need to do, you know, like Raquel just said, just like taking some water and throwing it out the door or whatever, like that is a transition. It's a moving of energy into a different space. And I think just a lot of us, again, in the West, we don't have these type of tools, you know, when over simple things, you know, it's like, even when we're like sad, let's say, you know, I'm sad. Well, okay, what are you going to do with that sadness? You know, is it just going to rule you now forever, or, you know, like for a long period? It's like you have to experience the emotion fully, and then let it transpire. Let it pass on.
Right.
Let it go to the next destination.
That makes me think about the planets and how they're right now, wherever you're sitting, they're moving around us and they're stirring up the soup that we're in. Everything. We're moving on the planet. The air is moving. Yet we're fighting for everything to be solid and the same, and the show to be on the same time of night. But right now, I feel like if people can get more comfortable with the flow of energy and the breaking apart and the coming together, you know, that's going to help in the next era because everything's changing so rapidly.
Well, beautifully said by both of you. And I just also want to add to that and say that the process of death is happening in every moment, every in-breath and out-breath. We are dying to every moment, and we just aren't aware of that. And that our fear of death has come from a culture that's been conditioned into us because many cultures really knew how to celebrate the process of death. And I will also say that in my process of having gone through many deaths of the identities and, you know, marriages and different experiences that I've had, on the other side, always so much more amazing and magical and like, oh, thank God that left. Thank God that was gone. And it's taught me to be less resistant to that process. So if that's helpful to anybody who might be listening, to just say, okay, you know, there are things that are trying to die in my life. I just need to let them.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah,
right?
So nicely said, because we think of death as this final point for some reason, and it's not. It's just the shedding of the snake skin, and there's a whole new reality to be experienced. And I, for one, believe that that will always be the case.
Right.
So, you know, that's personal, but that's my belief. And because it makes sense. It's just kind of like, that's what we've already been experiencing. We've been as you just mentioned, you know, like your identity, your relationship, your, you know, whatever, these are all, you know, experiences that we are living out and living through, and they too will pass.
I love that you use the snake shedding its skin, because when the snake is shedding its skin, it can be kind of cranky.
That's right.
It is hard work. It is not easy to get out of that old skin, but it's also tight and itchy and, you know, constrictive and so on. It needs to get out of it. And literally, this is one of the descriptions we have for this. There's this triple planetary alignment happening in 2020 of Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter in Capricorn. Basically, Capricorn has to do with the structure of our world. And Pluto's about dismantling it. Saturn's about helping to restructure it. Jupiter's about the new vision of how to bring that in. But Jupiter also is expanding Pluto's job to help the old world die so the new world can be born, because we have to shed that old skin before we can move into the new one.
Right.
And it's work. It's not easy. And it will test us. It will cause us to sometimes question if we're on the right track or not, or if we're like, you know, maybe we've done something wrong. Sometimes I've had that question come up like, wait a minute, I thought I was doing things right. Why is this happening?
For sure.
But I was off track. And so the universe was trying to get me back on the right track. And so when I finally surrendered to that, I was like, now I get it. Okay, I wasn't being punished. I was being helped.
Yes, yes.
That's so beautiful. Well, I feel like we have to get back to the show, even though we want to talk to you all day. But perhaps that's a great image to leave people with. You know, the world is shedding a skin of pollution and
control, dominance,
dominating versus harmonizing, and feeling the mystery. So perhaps everybody who's watching or listening could use the skin metaphor to really help take it off. Help take off the old skin and surrender to the mystery. And also, if you have a moment of triumph, when you feel free from that, which I know people probably don't right now have a lot of those moments because it's so stressful with
still in it.
Consciousness. We're in it. So, if you get a little moment of oh yeah, a small battle was won, plant some seeds of love out there. I think that it's easy to feel like our part doesn't matter in the greater cosmos, but I feel like everybody does really matter. And to feel like just helping the snake skin come off, or just planting a little seed of love out there, just thinking about it is helpful. And
also to celebrate and share that joy, I would say. It's like we also are oftentimes conditioned to rob ourselves of this joy, like we're not supposed to have it. And I think that after these deep dives, when you go in and you shed that skin and it hurts like hell and it's the hardest thing you've ever done, well, then you've done something. So again, clap, congratulations. That's what we're here to do. It's like you did it. So don't rob yourself of joy after the whole thing is done.
I love that you said celebrate it, because we don't celebrate ourselves enough when we have gone through these kinds of initiations and challenges and things in our life. And whenever there's anything that and we should celebrate each other too, not just ourselves, but each other, and more celebration of the fact that we are moving into a new world. This is the time. It's been prophesied. It's happening. It's we can't get out of it. It's going to happen. So let's enjoy it as much as we can. Let's also feel whatever we need to feel around it. If it's not pretty, that's okay. And celebrate when we get past that. And because we will release so much out of our systems that allow us then to have more light and love in our bodies, that when we let go of those feelings and that frustration, that anger, that hurt, that pain, that guilt, that shame, whatever it is.
True.
Right.
Thank you so much, Cayelin. Speaking with you is always a wonderful treat. And I know that I know you have hours and hours and years of knowledge and information. So people listening or watching, if you want to learn more, we'll put a link to how you can find Cayelin. And it's really amazing when people spend years accumulating knowledge. And thank you for sharing some of it with us today. Sure. It was incredible.
My total pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and you two are so delightful. I love doing this, and if you ever want to have me back, I'm happy to come.
Sounds great. Thanks so much. This was incredible.
Thank you.